All right, welcome back. So we're going to get started working on responsive design, right? So at this point, you should have your designs together. Now we're going to start to make them adjust as we change our different viewport sizes. So I want to just start with demonstrating just the basics of how the process works. So I'm just going to make a folder on the desktop called responsive demo. And we're going to open it up and I'm going to make an index file. All right, then I'm going to make a CSS folder. Then in the CSS folder, we're going to do style.css. And we're going to make a new file called media queries.css. Okay. All right, so we got all our basics in place. So for this demo, we're going to also introduce another little piece of software that as you do more coding, you may find that you have things that you do or use all the time, right? Media queries is one of the things I use all the time. And I keep track of those in a snippet manager, right? So snippets are just small pieces of code. Don't have to want to remember and rewrite this stuff every time. You always use it. So I have a bunch of them, right? So here's the animated underline that we used as part of the warm-up project. So anytime I need it, I come and I can just grab it. I've given myself where it's from, and it's some little notes about what I have to change, and then I can just put it into my new project, and I'm off to the races, right? So here's my media queries file, and so let's just go ahead and copy all this. Head back to ours. There we go. And I'll post this archive so you can download it so you don't have to try and type or remember what all these things say. So what media queries do is to basically give us a way to change our CSS based on the size of the viewport. And if we just take this is just some random website. I'll be talking about where to save these code snippets in a little bit. But what happens, right? You're familiar with all this. This is what it looks like at full width, right? And then when it gets a little narrower, right, it hits some specific spot and some things change, right? Now some things are hidden, and now we've switched it. We have the hamburger menu, right? So that opens up. And the image changes size, right? When it's a little bit bigger, it gets a little larger, right? So at each of these different viewport widths, right, different code is being applied to change the layout and the style. The points at which a change occurs is called a breakpoint, right? And there's no hard and fast rules about how many breakpoints any page might have. Traditionally, I use 5 that I normally design to, and these 5 are from a CSS or a library called Bootstrap, which offers a whole bunch of CSS classes that will let you lay out pages very quickly once you've memorized the classes, of course. So, and the way that media queries normally work, right? There's 2 traditional processes. One's called desktop first. The other one is called mobile first. And what they're designed to do is to get your site looking good in one of the 2 extremes, either at the smallest or the largest. And then as you move through, right, the site getting smaller and smaller and smaller, you change the styles to adjust to the new viewport size. Okay. So desktop first, what these do, max width, 320 pixels. You'll use the entire rule, but basically it says, use these styles, right, where it says add rules here. We'll put our new CSS styles in there. And it's saying use these styles on all devices up to a maximum width of 320, right? So if it's 240, if it's 300, if it's 318, your viewport width from here to here, then these rules will apply. Now, you don't have to put all the rules for all the page. You only put the rules that you need to modify from your full width design, right? So it may be that the type headlines get too big, right? On a desktop, they look great, but on your phone, much too big. You have to make them smaller, right? So maybe you change the H1 from 200 pixels to 40 pixels tall, right? Stuff like that. So you only use rules in here that you need to override additional rules. Okay. And then it just works its way up, right? So from 320, you can go up to 576, right? There might be different rules. Then up to 768, up to 992, and finally 1200, and then anything over 1200. Now, you don't have to use all of these points, right? So traditionally, right, I'll start at 1200, so I rarely ever use 1200 and larger. But sometimes you do, if like you go for a really, really designer, you really want to do something on the full 27-inch, super big, maybe you would. Okay. Now the mobile first method, right, works in a different direction, right? It's the minimum width. And basically it says apply these styles with a minimum width of 320. So every page, every version of 320 will get these styles, right? All the way up to 720 or 1200, right? And then when it gets to 480, maybe you add some more. And at 768, you add some more. 992, you add some more. 1200, you add more, right? So the process is you get the phone version looking the way you want it, and then you add to it as you get larger. The reason I use desktop first is just that's the way I design. I'm old, so I started designing before there were mobile phones. So that's the way I think about it. And then I just take my large design and adjust it down to the phone and redesign whatever pieces I need to redesign there. So that's and having done it a few times, I know the basics of how I'm going to want to handle the menu. All right, so when I start coding, I usually have a design for the phone and the desktop. And then I build the desktop version because that's the most complex, and then down to the phone where I usually hide stuff. So you can use whichever one makes sense to you, but that's how these will work. So let's go see what this looks like in practice. I'm just going to go ahead and save this. There we go. I have this little snippet of an HTML file. I'm just going to copy the whole thing. And I'm just going to overwrite my current HTML file. And like I said, I'll post this code so you can have it. Okay, so let's take a look at what I have here. Right, Stammel's normal HTML, and I have two style sheets linked. The first one is CSS style, right? So it's in the CSS folder, and I'm using style, right? No S on the name. And then after it, and this is important, after style loads, then media queries loads. Right? And the reason for that is this is going to be my base information. That's what's going to style my page. Then after that, any changes will be in the media queries file. So let's remember, right? The computer reads information and runs the commands from the top to the bottom. So first I want to load up all my CSS style, and then if they're going to be modified based on the viewport, that's when I want the media queries to run. I've just put in some boxes inside a container, just, so we can have something to work with. So I'm going to paste in, right, just some CSS styles, and I'll post this code so that you can download it. You don't have to memorize or write this stuff down. You can just sort of get the basics of it. Okay. All right, so let's just take a look at what we've got here, okay? Right, I have a container. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 divs in it. Each is a box, and each has a color, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Take a look at our style.css. The container wraps, right, our width 100, our display flex, right, keeps them all sideways. We've set the width for our box class of 100, our height 300%. And because it's 100, it will just, right, it's 100%, it'll just scale, right? So it'll always stay whatever size. You'll also notice, right, that I still got this white little space around, right? And you'll remember from earlier, let's just go here up at the top. And I'm just pasting this in from another file I have on my desktop, right? And this is the universal selector, and I'm saying margin 0, so I'm taking all the margin off of everything. And now, right, all my elements are flush to the edges. Okay, great. Okay, so all is good. We've got our basics, and now let's get to our media queries, and we can make some changes and see how this stuff might work. Okay. And we're going to work with, nothing fancy. All right, so let's start with right, we're just going to use this one, this rule, row reverse, right? And you'll see, right, the colors switch, okay? All right, and we put that on the container side. Great. So, all right, so that's how that'll work. And for this demo, I'm just going to do desktop first, right? So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of all the mobile first rules because I don't need them, right? And again, I have this, like I said, I have this in my snippet, so I just go back and get it if I need it for some reason. Okay. So, where I'm going to make my change, right? I'm just going to copy this rule, right? And here, okay, I'm going to paste it. And I don't need to change any of this, but I am going to change the flex direction, right? And I'm going to set it to row reverse. Okay. Now let's see what happens. Whoops, look at that. Oh, there it is, 1. And as I get smaller and smaller, boop, colors all reverse. Okay, so we've hit short of 1200. Okay, so it will row reverse up to a max of 1200. But after that, all right, it goes to whatever I had originally set in my style sheet. Okay. Okay, so now it's switched over, and this rule will continue to apply all the way down, right? So as I drag and drag and drag and drag, right, as it gets smaller, it still says row reverse, right? The orange is on the left. When it gets larger, orange goes to the right, and the colors switch which sides they're on, right? And that's the basic principle. You make the changes, and then smaller screens will maintain those changes, and as you go further and further down, they'll stay the same, right? So if we can make a change here, right? So we take a look at our style sheet, and maybe what we're gonna want to do is we're gonna change on color 1, right? So at 922. We're going to change the background color from blue, right, to RGB 0. So let's save that. Okay, so now as we get smaller, they reverse, and then blue changes to black when we hit 992. Okay. All right, so that's how it works. Right now, thing to remember about media queries that's very important, right, is if we take a look here, right, we see our curly brackets are already set up. And then we have to put the whole rule that we're after inside of it, okay? And that rule has to include its own curly brackets. All right, so this is key. The whole rule is within the brackets that are associated with the media query. If you don't include these outer brackets and have this format, the media query will not apply. Okay. So that's the basics, right? Nothing more complicated than that. All right. We have all of our classes, right, that we're targeting, color 1, right, container. We have our base styles that have all of our normal layout, and then our media queries, right? And we can continue to add into these, right? So whatever other change we wanted to make. And, we can get more dramatic, right? So if we target the container class again, right? Again, we're not going to need these, but what we want to do is we want to do flex wrap, and we're going to say wrap. Okay, there we go. Right. So now, right, as we get there, we change color to black, and then we get smaller, and boop, right? We take all of our boxes, and now they wrap, right? So much more appropriate for a phone. And again, as the window size gets larger, right, they go back to their original color and then their original order. Okay. So that's it. That's how it works. So, like I said, pretty straightforward. It's a little trickier in practice, but conceptually, this is what you're after, right? You've started with your full width design, so you can start working on, and for our project, right, you only need one version, one smaller version. So, target 576 would be my recommendation, but you can do as many as you want. You can do a tablet version at 768 and then a phone version at 576. In professional practice, 3 is standard, but there's really no limit to the size the sizes that you work with. Okay. All right, that's it for this one.